We're going to be discussing a home rule petition to authorize Lincoln to restrict fossil fuel infrastructure in construction projects, and it's going to be presented at town meeting in a couple of weeks. I am Tricia O'Hagan. I'm a member of Mothers Out Front in Lincoln. Joining us here tonight is Paul Schaub from the Green Energy Committee. He's the chair, as is Roy Harvey, who's on the Green Energy Committee. And Alex Chatfield is a Lincolnite and a member of St. Anne's Climate Justice Ministry. So we can start moving on, Alex. So I'm just going to start with talking about the origins, how we decided to move ahead with this. It's a citizens petition, so a few citizens got together, circulated, and got the thing signed, the warrant. We're going to be number 31 on the warrant, which I think is very close to the end. So we are going to need all our supporters to show up. Some of the people who are signed the original petition are here, Alex and I and Paul. Did. Then after that, those citizens went to the Green Energy Committee and asked for their help. So the Green Energy Committee drafted a motion, and they've been consulting with the town council, with the select board and the planning board throughout this process to make sure it works for everybody. And Paul just said that I think we're ready to go. Its final draft has been okayed today, so that's great. So we've been endorsed so far by the Green Energy Committee, by the Lincoln Land Conservation Trust, by Mothers Out Front in Lincoln, and we're hoping that the planning board will get on board with us at their next meeting.
Thank you. So the motion is pretty short, but I can summarize it and break it down here. It basically is asking the legislature to give us permission to regulate. We won't actually regulate until we decide to do that. That would have to be at a subsequent town meeting. The permission to regulate we'd be allowed to restrict fossil fuel hookups to new buildings and also major renovations. What counts as a major renovation would have to be defined. Fossil fuel free is a term used just for brevity in the motion. What that means is if you're going to get a building permit for a new building or a new condo unit or major modification, then it can't be fueled with natural gas or other fossil fuels in support of its operation. So that means you couldn't use gas for heating or cooking, but you could use it to fuel a backup electrical generator. The town could also choose to put some other exceptions in if it wanted to for low-income housing or whatever. Those details remain to work out, but that's the core concept. We'll be asking for authority to regulate. Next slide. So again, the purpose is to enable us to require that new construction be all electric, including cooking and heating. We'd be getting legislative authority. We'd have to have a future town meeting, presumably after a fair amount of public hearings, et cetera, to adopt a bylaw. None of this would take effect until then. Next slide.
So Tricia and I have a partially electrified home. We have some solar panels. We have 3 air source heat pumps. We drive 2 electric vehicles. And so the vision that our group is presenting is a future for Lincoln when our homes and commercial buildings will be heated and cooled exclusively with electricity, and our consumption of fossil fuels in general will be reduced to a bare minimum. This is more than an idealistic dream. It is a necessity if we are going to play our role in mitigating the effects of climate change caused by human burning of fossil fuels. So 18 years ago, when we renovated our home, we were not overly worried about the approaching climate emergency, and we thought we were doing good enough by continuing to burn gas for heating and cooking because it was not as bad for the environment as oil. But since then, we have taken many opportunities to make our home more sustainable, but we haven't fully kicked the gas habit. This slide illustrates that today, excellent technologies exist that make it possible to live comfortably and economically using electricity throughout a home instead of fossil fuels. We truly wish that the technology and building codes had been in place years ago so that we would have been required to do an all-electric renovation. So some members of our community may be wondering, well, that's all well and good, but why do we need to act now? It is the overwhelming consensus of scientists and policy experts that the window for mitigating the worst effects of human-caused global warming is closing fast. Already, the catastrophic effects of climate change are exceeding predictions. Wildfires, floods, droughts, and extreme weather events annually cause many billions of dollars in damage across the world. A sixth mass extinction of animal and plant species is underway. Yet, the cost of climate change harms are not priced into the cost of fossil fuels, which receive billions of dollars in government subsidies annually. We need to consider this when we compare the cost of burning fossil fuels to using renewable energy. The effects of climate change are happening everywhere, not just in California, where that resident was surveying the wreckage of his home. While New England has so far been spared some of the scariest examples of massive wildfires, we have seen more frequent and severe storms, torrential rain with flooding, and ever-rising annual temperatures. And we know ocean temperatures in Massachusetts Bay and the Gulf of Maine are warming faster than the global average, which is causing lobster populations to shift their habitat towards Canada. These effects of climate change are expected to accelerate and become more unpredictable in coming years. They are all bad for the New England economy, which in many ways depends on the natural environment and traditional four seasons, which support activities like agriculture and tourism and outdoor recreation. So before I turn the presentation back over to Paul, I'll conclude with the positive message that all electric homes are healthier for their residents. Burning so-called natural gas in your home elevates levels of toxic gases, which are unhealthy to breathe, especially for children and older adults. Gas sold in New England is produced by fracking, a process which introduces many toxic chemicals into the environment and to the gas itself. Air pollution from oil and natural gas production, including fracking activities, is a serious problem that threatens the health of nearby communities. So, to protect the health and safety of all of our community, we need to move towards a fossil fuel-free future in our homes and other buildings.
So I'm going to present just two more slides to put it in a Lincoln-specific context before we give it back to Trish and Alex to talk about the vision of what it would look like for an all-electric home. So this pie chart is the output of a study that the Green Energy Committee had done for it by a good consultant based on 2017 data. It's not much different now. This shows where the greenhouse gas emissions attributable to people living in Lincoln come from. And basically the stuff in the orange third, you might say, in the southwest corner, more or less, that's what's the greenhouse gas emissions are attributable to the fossil fuels used in building. You've got the oil that's burned, the natural gas that's burned. You got the gas leaks there in that crosshatched section. So what we're talking about, the future we need to move towards is to turn all of that orange green, essentially. In other words, all the households would be powered by electricity. This warrant article only speaks to new houses. Eventually we'll have to figure out how to retrofit. That's a separate question. And then, of course, we need to have electricity produced from clean renewable sources like wind. And then that left half will be green and all good. Next slide, please. So as some of you probably know, in Lincoln, we've already made some really good progress towards greening our electricity. We have the so-called Lincoln Energy Choice Plan, which for most people, if they don't do anything, they are now automatically getting about half of their electricity is tied to wind power. About 10% of our citizens, a little bit more, have chosen to opt up to 100% green, which is great. By the way, that makes us the top participating town in the state, so far as we know. The reason this is so great is it drives the construction of more renewable energy projects, what you could call greening the grid. So it really makes a difference. So quick pitch for anyone who hasn't opted in to the 100% option yet. Right now, that costs even less than Eversource's prices, which are fixed for the next half of year. We can't say that'll be always the case because Eversource changed its prices, but our prices are fixed through 2022. And so there's a link where you can sign up.
Okay, so we know people have lots of questions about what it means to do all electric new construction. We know there may be questions about safety, efficiency, reliability, especially in the New England climate. We are convinced, though, that we have reached a point with the technology that it is safe, efficient, and reliable for heating and cooling, and that starting with new construction and new equipment, that it can offer lower cost and lower operating costs over the life of the building, which is amazing news. So we're also going to talk about how, because we know there's a lot of passionate cooks in the community, we're going to talk about how cooking with modern electric cooktops can be a great experience. But we also want to assure people that if you're planning a barbecue, you can still go outside and have your propane-fueled gas grill that would not be regulated by a future bylaw. So this is an illustration of what electric home heating looks like. You've got a compressor outside the house that you can see. And inside you have the fan unit, which brings in hot or cool air and distributes it around the room. And you've got very sophisticated controls that can do many of the same things that programmable thermostats can do to schedule when you want that to occur. So heat pumps years ago kind of got a bad rap in terms of operating in New England. But since they have been tremendously improved, they can now handle our coldest temperatures. They can be backed up by an emergency generator or a battery system. Many homes have multiple units, so even if you lose one, you can operate the others and be fine till it gets repaired, although they're known for being very reliable. And using this technology, there is no risk of gas explosions or indoor pollution from combustion. So that's really good news.
I can address this.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so as we'll mention again at the end, the state is currently developing a opt-in stretch code because the recent legislation requires it. And in connection with that, their report shows that the comparable efficient heat pump versus furnace, the heat pump is actually less expensive to install when you're starting new. Similarly for water heaters. And that's even before you add these very substantial rebates the state's offering. The equipment is just less expensive when you're building new. In addition, they're currently less expensive to operate with the gas and electricity prices we have. And you can actually plug that into a calculator, which we'll provide a link to at the end, and check it for yourself. So there's really no cost downside when you're building new. Ground source heat pumps, instead of air source heat pumps, cost more upfront. They're even cheaper to operate. So you've got that traditional trade-off, and you can make your choice.
So I think we are moving into the cooking section, and I'm going to invite Trish to come in and talk about what we see here.
Hi, everybody. So here we're just looking at, we've got our old, what most of us have now is gas on the left with the flame that you see. Those are gases burning in your house. Then you've got our traditional electric cooktop in the middle, which is just a resistance coil. If this were to pass in Lincoln, this would be absolutely fine. It is very affordable and not as efficient as the new generation electric cooktops, but still works fine. But what I'd really like to talk about is the induction cooktops, which are sort of the newest technology and are marvelous. Next slide, please, Alex. So there's many advantages of the induction cooktops, both versus gas and the traditional electric cooktops. They're really fast. The induction stoves transfer energy through the metals in the pan. So it is really just acting on the pan. The one downside is, of course, if you get induction cooktop, you do need your pots and pans to either have some iron or steel in them so that they will work. But that's pretty easy. And we got one this year, and I don't think most of our pots and pans worked. I think we had to get one more. It cooks very evenly because it's heating up the entire base of the pot, which is terrific. Amazingly easy to clean. Induction cooktops have a glass ceramic top, just like the traditional sort of the glass on the top of a regular electric cooktop. However, these are great because if you're cooking a soup and it pours over and spills everywhere, as soon as it's out of the pot, it starts to cool down. So it's never going to burn on your cooktop because it just sits there so it's easy to clean up, because literally once it's out of the pot, it is no longer heating up anymore. So that's great. And of course, our gas stoves that we all used to love and maybe still do love, they're really hard to clean. Next. So this is talking about the energy aspects of the induction cooktops. They're very efficient. Just the pan is heated. So there's no energy wasted around the pan. Induction stoves are about 85% efficient. If you think about your gas stove, when it's on, they say it's only about 32% efficient. But all those flames that are going around the sides, that's not being efficient. It's not cooking your food. It's heating the air in your room. Much safer. There's no flame and no residual heat after you remove the pan. So accidental burns are minimized. They're very popular for that reason with parents with young children. And also, you know, as we age and our memories aren't quite as good as they used to be, these are wonderful because if you take the pan off, you don't even have to turn it off, because without the pan to be on the cooktop, it just stops working. So it's very safe. And of course, there will never be a gas leak, and there's no ignition failures, and there's no gas line. So that's the most amazing thing. And indoor air pollution is being studied more and more, and people are realizing that it is a bigger problem than we realized. And induction cooktops don't burn fuel, so they are healthier. The fracked gas that comes in our pipes from most of the time from Pennsylvania for us, those are filled with all sorts of chemicals, nitrous oxide, nitrous dioxide, formaldehyde, and particulate matter, and those all get expelled into our houses. So New York Times on Saturday had a great article about this, talking about the health effects of gas stoves. And so there's an easy switch when you next need a new cooktop. So we do want to prevent asthma rates and cardiovascular disease from getting higher than they already are, and getting the indoor air pollution to be cleaner. On the left is a sort of a portable induction cooktop. It is a plug-in, and it is actually at our library right now. We have a library of things in Lincoln, and the cooktop is one of the items. So if you're at all interested in it and want to share it with someone, try it out, you can check it out. It is a pretty, low quality model. It costs about $70, I think, but it gives you an idea of what it's like. And then also on the right, just reiterating that, a portable gas canister for your grill would be fine, even if this were to pass at a town meeting in the future.
Okay, so this would be something for Lincoln, but it also would have bigger implications, constructive ones, if Lincoln passes it at town meeting. So I hope we do. To put it in a little bit of context, so a year ago, March, the governor signed the Climate Act, longer name Next Generation Roadmap Bill for Climate Policy, something like that, which sets some very appropriate goals. It says we need to be net zero by 2050, and on the way we need to get by 2030 a 50% reduction from the 1990 baseline. We've already made positive progress. We still have to reduce another third from where we are now by 2030, 8 years left. Keep on reducing 75% by 2040, net zero by 2050. Okay, so how's that going to happen? There are procedures set out in that statute, but they're not perfect. And next slide. Oh, this is not quite the latest slide. That's all right. So we're going to put a lot more information about this on the lincolngreenenergy.org website. You can get to that through the town website. We've got a document we're putting together which have a lot of links with more stuff for anybody who'd like to dig in deeper, like to the state stretch code, copy of the warrant, copy of the article, articles on the health risks with burning gas in your house, all that good kind of stuff. Oh, here we go. In conclusion, right. So please show up for town meeting. You're ready to vote for Article 31 and the motion underneath it. There'll be another climate Article 9, which you'll also want to vote for. Please also submit comments on net zero stretch code. There'll be a link in how to do that in the document that we'll be posting on our website. And don't forget to sign up for 100% green electricity if you haven't done so already.
Now we thought we would make some time for questions. And also, if there are any questions in the chat that we can answer, that would be great. So yeah, what are your thoughts?
So there is a question for Paul. Oh, well, I think that Paul can answer it. Is there
Sure.
a model comment on the stretch building energy code? And I would refer to the Mass Net Zero Buildings Coalition, and they have a very extensive comment we could sign on to.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for asking that, Kathleen. And I can actually put a link to it in the chat.
Yes, Anne.
Well, I had a pleasant surprise. I have a garage apartment. I bought my house last August, and I'm just kind of getting what I want now. And the garage apartment had baseboard, old baseboard electric heat, and I got one high-end Mitsubishi mini split. It cost $8,400 to put in. And I called up Mass Save to see how my refund was coming along. And unless the guy was kidding me, I'm getting $8,400. The Mitsubishi mini split costs zero, nothing.
You scored.
I did it through Rodenheiser. They have people who are pretty hip about this stuff, so I really want to pass it along.
Wow, that is a great tip. Good for you. That's a huge success.
I signed up with them in the fall, and they told me that they'd had a preview of what the rules were going to be this year, and that I should wait until after January. And so my mini split was put in January 3rd.
And how do you like it so far?
Well, the apartment is in the process of being renovated, so I've got it turned way down. So that, but before I figured out how to turn it way down, it was really warming things up. It was really nice.
Yeah, you'll love it in hot, humid weather too. It's very effective at cooling.
Yeah.
Lovely.
What's the timetable for this?
What's the?
No, I was asking one of the presenters what the timetable will be.
What will the timetable be for this?
For the implementation of this, if we vote on it in town meeting? Right. So in terms of actually implementing it, we would need another town meeting, which might be a year later, to actually adopt a bylaw. So between now and then, there would be probably some public hearings on the draft that we already have in mind. So we could get a lot of people's input on exactly, how to draft it. what exceptions should there be? Should there be a waiver process? That kind of thing.
If I can just add, it's slightly unknowable, Ursula, because what we're doing at the moment is asking the state legislature to let us do this. They can be as slow as they kind of want to be. So we're at the whim of them a little bit. But the other option is that if Tammy Gouveia and Senator Eldridge's bill was passed this year, that would go right over the top of it, and that would allow towns to start doing this, have their votes right now. So we don't know.
Right. So then one more layer of the peeling the onion. One possible approach would be see what the legislature passes this summer. If they pass something good, we're done. If they don't, we could then start a process to adopt a bylaw. We could adopt it next town meeting, and then we'd have to wait for the legislature to approve it. So multiple paths here, but we will find a way.
What do other towns do? Is this something other towns are doing too?
Yes. So glad you asked.
So,
All right. So there's 5 towns that are ahead of us already in the pipeline. They've all passed not only the request to the legislature, but also a specific bylaw. So it's Acton, Brookline, Arlington, Concord, and Lexington. So we've looked at all of their bills and their specific bylaws. So we have some models we can follow, but of course we can also do what we want.
and statewide, New York City is starting to do this for new construction. So it's moving ahead in lots of places. Because really, the bottom line is when you look at how to get from here to there with reducing our emissions, nobody's really been able to figure out a way to do it without major electrification of most things. So most climate action plans that states and towns and cities all have a large component of electrification as part of their plan.
Is there enough infrastructure to make this change? Will that be an issue?
That's a great question. I can address that. Right. So if we imagine everything going electric today, right? All the houses and everybody's got an electric vehicle charging their driveway, right? That would be a big change. And there would be some problems with the grid right now. But that's not going to happen instantly, right? So we basically need to work in parallel paths, both on this side and on transforming the grid side. There's no other way to do it.
But I can tell you that when municipalities decide to make these changes, it sends a signal to regulators and utilities and legislators that those kinds of changes need to be made. And that's even happening in a small way in conjunction with our school building project. I've attended some of the meetings discussing the large solar array that's going to go on top of the school. And even our little project here in Lincoln has caused Eversource to have to rethink how it can do connections like this for a school that allow the school to keep operating even if the solar array or nearby utility lines need maintenance. So every little bit of change stimulates more change. And we have to start somewhere. And this is one of the easiest and most obvious places to start.
Go ahead, Roy.
It takes a long time both for the building stock to change to more efficient electrically heated methods, and it takes a similarly long time for the grid to change to be able to accommodate the increase in capacity needed for electric cars and electric homes. So the ISO New England, the independent system operator that runs the electricity grid in New England, is well aware of this. And we're looking at 2050 to get to net zero. The state has a plan to get there. And ISO is working on a plan as well to have enough capacity when we need it. There used to be a winter peak in energy consumption. When people got air conditioning, the peak moved to the summertime. And ISO New England is planning on having expecting that the peak in annual energy consumption will occur in winter again, and they're moving towards being able to meet that demand.
Thanks, Roy.
Kathleen put an interesting question in the chat, which I could try to respond to, and Alex and Trisha anyone might have another reaction. What arguments do you anticipate from opponents at town meeting? So I can think of a bunch, most of which would be based on not really understanding what the proposal is. Like one would be, we haven't had enough time to study this. My response to that would be, we're not passing the bylaw now. We'll have a whole year or whatever to work out the details. This is giving us authority. We need to get the authority to even think about it, because that's how the state works. That'd be one. Another might be, I'm a libertarian, or someone with a libertarian background might say, I don't want to give the town any more authority to regulate my complete freedom to do whatever I want, right? My response to that would be, I understand that point of view. I hope we can outvote you, because although we all respect individual freedom, we have to balance that with our duties to each other. We live in society. You know, your freedom to move your fist ends at the point of my nose. And similarly, we have to stop burning stuff because it's killing people. You guys have any other thoughts?
Cost. People are going to be very worried that it's going to cost them more and it's not going to be warm enough.
Right.
And so, you know, but there's plenty of data around, and Roy's kind of the expert on that. I think that, you know, the costs aren't that different. But it's what I sort of want to say. And when you're talking about this to people in town is, we're doing this now because we believe in it and we would love for it to happen. But really what we're doing is starting the conversation for our town. Our town has not been able to have a robust conversation about this really important part of climate change prevention or mitigation. And it's time we did. So we're starting that conversation, and we're really happy that you're here to join us.
And I'm really
I think
happy.
we'd also be interested in any, I don't mean to cut off questions, but any feedback people have, because you're our first test audience for this, which we'll present another time. Do you have any comments on anything we could present more clearly, or something we left out? Or
Hi, this is Kathleen. I think your presentation is really great. I think what you're likely to come up with is, you know, just the crazy uncertainty of current world events. And I live in Battle Road Farm, so tiny condo townhouse, got all of the Mass Save retrofits, including, you know, all those inches of insulation in my attic several years ago, which I'm very grateful for, but still my utility bills are through the frigging stratosphere. So you know, and I mean, you know, every week of increasing tragedy in Ukraine, I can imagine, is going to be making people more and more and more anxious about fossil fuels. So, you know, I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, there's nothing to be done about that. Right. And the climate does not care about Vladimir Putin. So, you know, one has to do it anyway. But, you know, I think that is, that I think is an impediment. I mean, it's an impediment for anybody making any kind of change at all.
right, we hope that would support the move away from fossil fuels to electric generation, because it actually costs less. As someone else pointed out, since the invasion of Ukraine, the price of wind power has gone up 0%.
Nice.
But Kathleen, I appreciate your point that there is a great sort of generalized anxiety about issues related to energy, right. and that you know, people are nervous about inflation, as well as you know, even opening their utility bills. We saw some pretty shocking gas bills ourselves, even though we've tried to reduce our consumption. But on the other hand, driving an electric vehicle, I haven't had to pay anything additional for gas for the car. So over time, these changes should insulate us actually from these geopolitical disasters, many of which are connected to energy production or the politics around how energy is distributed.
Kathleen, you mentioned that you've exercised a lot of the incentives from Mass Save. There's a new program, and every 3 years they update their program. So we're currently in the phase from 2022 to 2024. And if you haven't done your windows yet, there are some fantastic incentives to put in efficient double pane and triple pane windows. You might want to look into those if you haven't looked at Mass Save this year.
That's awesome news, because if any of you have visited friends at Battle Road Farm, there are many awesome things about this community, but our windows are miserable. So maybe it's something to look into.
Well, I live in a deck house that had single pane metal frame windows, so I share your pain. I've replaced them since, but
I'm guessing the return on investment, if you can get some really good deals on windows, is going to be pretty quick. So that's definitely worth checking out.
Definitely. Yep.
And I mean, I saw that Steve, you think that cost is going to be an issue, and I think it is, and there'll be many discussions about it going forward. But I think that Alex alluded to it earlier, but what we don't, as we go along in our day-to-day lives, we're not really taking into account the cost that climate is doing, right? That what's it going to be like for us in Lincoln when, the trees are dying and the cost of our houses are going down because, the native trees can't live in the climate. I mean, there's so many intangibles that I think are important to talk about and to think about because, in Lincoln, a lot of our value is in our home and and the cost of our home. If we're having floods and God forbid wildfires, but it could happen anywhere, that these are externalities that we have to think about as we move forward as a community.
And my experience with this mini split, which presumably is going to, the reason they have the rebate is that they've looked at the old electric bills for this apartment and they know what the electricity is going to cost, or they can, run it out into the future. And they want to encourage people to do this. So it's free. That was free. And I didn't pick up on it, and I really regret it. But I think both, well, I don't know about the mini split, but the solar panels, I believe there's a $25,000 10-year interest-free loan. I mean, the government is begging people to do this stuff. So it's just a matter of educating yourself about how you can take advantage of these programs.
That's exciting, Ed.
And moving forward, the Green Energy Committee has a household home group that's working a lot with people in the community about making sure they know about these rebates and things. Belinda is doing a great job on that.
Can I ask a question? And this actually might sort of feed into your advocacy. I bought my house in 2018, and I had my all of my HVAC reinstalled in 2019, some of which was eligible for a Mass Save 0% loan, and other parts were not. And I think one thing that has been sort of nerve-wracking and problematic with Mass Save is that it seems like the Mass Save rebate programs have changed quite a lot. And I wonder whether any of you know, let's just say hypothetically, 2 years from now, Lincoln is permitted to do this and votes this, is there any potential for Mass Save to have, essentially a program that is intelligible and makes sense over a period of a couple of years so people know what they're getting into? I think that's been a challenge with Mass Save.
My understanding is that the Mass Save programs are in 3-year intervals, and we're just at the beginning of the 2022 to 2024 cycle. So I doubt there'll be any significant changes for the next, whatever, 2.5 years. But if you need any help decoding what's available, have any questions, feel free to contact one of us. And also Sue Klim has been very good at spreading the word about what Mass has to offer. But we'd be happy to help guide you through that.
I just think, for purposes of your presentation at town meeting, I think that it's important to make the point that, just make that point that you just made. I'm a veteran of all of this Mass Save stuff, and I did not realize that there was a 3-year cycle. This is news to me. So I think that would be probably helpful, and maybe some people would find that heartening. You're not likely to get into the middle of something and then find that your economic calculations were wrong.
Right. And like Anne had the benefit of some guidance to say, wait until 2022, because they'll be better than they were in 2021.
Good.
And I think we will have more information with pointers to the Mass Save and other programs on the Green Energy website. That's part of what Paul had mentioned. So keep an eye on that as well. But feel free to contact us. I think there's a general email for Lincoln Green Energy that you can shoot a message to, or any of us on this call.
Well, any other comments or questions, or any closing remarks from our panelists?
Thank you for your good work.
I just wanted to say that we're really fortunate to have you in town. Thank you so much. You've made great changes already.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the information. And now we know that we need to stay at town meeting until the bitter end.
Right.
That's
I'd like to
right.
say thank you, everybody, for showing up and letting us practice on you,
Yeah.
and for spreading the word to get your friends to show up for a town meeting.
Stay late and vote green. That's our motto.
Right.
Back.
Bye,
You can wear green
everybody.
to town meeting if you want.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. We really
Bye.
appreciate you coming. Good night.